sing them. So when I point to me, then that's my turn. And then when I point out to y'all, that is you. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go.
Your people are my people. Your people are mine.
Your people are my people. Your people are mine.
Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. So we'll do that, just singing it this time. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. 'Cause your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your turn. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Great rehearsal. So we're going to start now. And, you know, when I do this song elsewhere, there's life, there's some percussion. So, you know, it's morning, it's gloomy, so we have to create some of that life in abundance here. The choir will be here to help us. All right. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. One more time. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Again. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Your divine, my divine. Your divine, my divine. Your divine, my divine. Take a moment to greet your neighbors.
Yeah, I'll just
In these hard times, let us look first to the response of love. In the midst of challenge, may our chalice flame bear witness to the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. In the midst of uncertainty, may our chalice be a beacon of encouragement that our values may guide our choices. Let us look first to the response of love.
We come together this morning to remind one another, to rest for a moment on the forming edges of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment. until we can claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together. Our story this morning is about a guy named Jesus. Maybe you've heard of him. Maybe. And this guy, he had a lot of things to say. He was really busy most of the time doing really great things. And by great things, I mean tearing down the empire, hanging out with the poor, really radical things. And people were flocking to him because they were so curious. What is this guy doing? What is he saying? These are the things that I've never heard before. He's claiming to be all these things. I just have to see with my own eyes. And so I think as time passed by, he just accumulated people, and they were kind of like move through as a flock, and he'd stop and chat and hang out. And one day, and he had some people went home sometimes, because they have families. And some people, they left their belongings and they were with Jesus. They were called the disciples. And so one day they were roaming around, and Jesus was, I imagine him to be doing a thing like, hey, how's it going? How's your mom? And the disciples said, Jesus. They were like, excuse me, sir. Excuse me, it's getting late. So I think you probably should send these people home. They have to go eat, feed themselves. They have to clean up their houses. They have things to do. We really should, tell them, send them off on their way with a blessing, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Jesus said, that doesn't really make any sense. We can just feed them right here. Of course we can, Jesus said. Why not? And the disciples were like, sir, we don't really have that much food. All we have are these 5 loaves of bread and some pieces of fish. That's really, we've got thousands of people here. And Jesus was like, no, not a problem. It's okay. We're going to feed the people, and they'll be fed, and we'll continue on walking through. And the disciples probably were like, are you sure? Because what I'm looking at here and what the people are saying about how hungry they are, their bellies are growling. So I just they can have a snack. We can give them a snack. But I don't know about a whole meal, Jesus. You're doing a lot here. He said, guys, chill out. I've got it. He said, bring me the food, bring me the things. And he gathered them all together and lifted them up to his Father who lives somewhere in the sky, and he said, hey, Dad, thanks. Can you help us out here? I know that this is not something that I can do on my own. Just said thanks, said his little prayer, got his blessing, and then he started giving the disciples the pieces of bread and the fish. And I imagine the disciples being like, okay, I still don't know what you want me to do with this. This is still the same amount of food that you gave me. But they began tearing out the bread and giving the pieces of fish away. And at first you could see, the first 50 people eating probably, and the disciples were still going. And then the next 100 people, and then it just kept going. And no one really knew how it happened. But somehow there was enough. And after the disciples had gone to the back and given all the food and the fish and the bread, and they came back and they said, Jesus, they're full. I don't know what happened, but they're full. Their bellies are not just satisfied, they are satiated. We had an abundance of food. And in fact, the disciples said, we have more left over. And so the people left for the evening and came back, still curious about what exactly had happened, but know that they had been fed. And thus ends our story for the day. And we are going to sing our kids out with our song on the back cover of the gray hymnal.
Good morning. My name is Elaine Bailey Freed. I'm a member of this congregation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here in the sanctuary and those joining us online to worship this morning. In order to reach a wider community than those able to be physically present on Sunday morning, portions of this service are live streamed and available on YouTube and on our website at the fuun.org. Before I continue, let me remind you to silence your cell phones. As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We deepen our relationships as we create a compassionate, welcoming community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. We ask you to wear the paper name tags because it helps us get to know you better. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you may find it here. Whether you're new to Unitarian Universalism or visiting from another UU congregation, we invite you to stop by the welcome table after the service to have questions answered. People become members of this congregation by signing the membership book and supporting the church with their time and finances. If you're considering joining the church, please talk to our assistant minister, Holly Miller. Following the service, we hope everyone will enjoy coffee and fellowship in the social area, where you'll also find information about current opportunities for engagement and reflection. There are a number of announcements in the weekly bulletin, which I hope you'll take home and read, and I have a couple more. Today, we honor those people who have generously thought of the church's financial future by leaving something to our church when they pass on. We call that our legacy circle, and today we have 75 members listed on our website. We welcome everyone to join. It's as simple as making a request that gifts are made to the church in memoriam. Or it can be a bequest or distribution of IRA, annuity, or checking account to our church as beneficiary. Our newest members are Victoria Harris, Carol Koppel, Warren White, Ram Sriram, and Elishiva McManus. If you wish to join, please talk to a trustee of the endowment, and Susan Warner's here today. You can talk to Susan. And thank you to everyone for making the future of our church something that another generation can look forward to. And one more. Today is the last Sunday to get your tickets for the Habitat Valentine fundraiser, No Place Like Habitat Home, at the social justice table. We hope you'll support our annual build by purchasing a ticket or making a donation. Thank you very much.
Let's take a minute to finish arriving. To feeling our feet on the floor, the weight keeping us in our chairs. Taking a moment to find our breath once more. I invite you to remember your week, the moments of joy and sorrow that stick with you. The moments that you are inviting to be a part of your story. If you would like to share with this community the joy or concern that comes to mind, please come up and light a candle. And if you would like that to be read aloud, we have yellow slips of paper for you to write them down. Our chaplain, Kathleen Chang, will assist us this morning. prayer. Spirit of life and love and community and healing and celebration and grief, be with us and remind us over and over, time and time again, that we are not alone. Spirit of life and love, support us in transitions and inspire us to support each other. Hold us in moments of grief and inspire us to hold others and celebrate with us in moments of triumph and inspire us to celebrate with others. Spirit of life and love, be with us, inspire us to build and grow this community. May it be so. We give to this church because we believe in the work of this church to live in covenant, to build community, and to do justice inside and outside of these walls. One of the ways that this work shows up this month is through our Share the Plate program, which is with the Oasis Center, which provides after school and summer and counseling programming for youth all over Davidson County. Your gifts will now warmly be received.
As we move into a time of silent meditation, I invite you to exhale. I invite you to imagine that there is enough love, enough space, enough resources, and to allow your body to relax with that ease of enough. May it be so.
So I want to begin this morning with another breathing exercise. It goes a little something like this. We're going to inhale for 2 counts and exhale for 4. So take a deep breath in, 1, 2. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. Inhale, 1, 2. Exhale, 1, 2, 3. One more time for good measure. Inhale, 1, 2. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I don't know about what you just experienced, but when I do that, something really fascinating for me happens. When I inhale, I feel tense, and I feel constricted, and I feel just anxious. And when I exhale, I feel grounded, and I feel at ease, and I feel connected. And what's fascinating for me about that is because oxygen is good for me. Oxygen is what keeps me alive. Oxygen is, I'm supposed to want oxygen. I do. We breathe all the time. And so it's fascinating to me that when I have a lot of it and I hold it and I hoard it, it doesn't actually feel that great. Exhaling actually feels a lot better. And it stretches us because you get to the bottom of that exhale and you're like, am I gonna make it? But it feels better and I feel calm. Maybe that's what you experienced. And so when I'm thinking about how we can live more into our values and how we can build relationships, I think about exhaling as opposed to inhaling. And when I think about all the stories that surround love for me, it's mostly heteronormative, one person to one person together. So I was a child of the 90s, and we got the best Disney movies and some of the best Nicholas Sparks, which I still love today. But they imparted on me a particular sort of love, a particular sort of intimacy. And I'm curious today about the other narratives that we can use to exhale, to live more deeply into the spirit of generosity. So I told the story of Jesus feeding the multitudes this morning because I think it's a brilliant example of what it looks like to exhale. What it looks like to share, what it looks like in the womanist tradition to make a way out of no way. And I think there are 2 really important parts of that story that allow Jesus to exhale, and hopefully the disciples to exhale with him. The first is the imagination, the imagining that it was possible that we could feed these people. And so I'll talk about imagination later, probably not today. But the second thing that I thought was really critical in that story that allows Jesus to exhale is the blessing. That moment that he had with God or his Father, whatever works for you. And not because there was some miracle that transpired, not because God had a buffet and made it appear and everyone was fed. Less that. Definitely not that. What I thought was so magical was about gratitude and honoring a covenant. Jesus, and whoever his father was, had a covenant to do certain things on earth. That I think us as UUs are trying to do similar things. Sometimes tear down the empire, hang out with poor people, do the things that would make justice come true in the world. And so it's interesting to me that the moment of covenant, that exchange, that conversation with his father, was a critical step for him before he was able to feed the people. So back in September, I did a service with Tyler Coles, a former VDS Vanderbilt Divinity School classmate, and he asked two questions that have stuck with me and that I think about almost every week. He said, "What are you building and how are you building it?" I mean, it's a simple thing, but it really cuts to my gut and keeps me honest and striving towards integrity. He said, "What are you building and how are you building it?" And so as UUs, we have the 7 principles that are kind of the what, kind of the bones of it. And our covenants, when we form them in community, are kind of the how. And today I want to talk about a couple of things that would really flesh that out a little bit, that help us to breathe. And the first thing is living into the space of gratitude, to exhale. What would it look like if we exhaled in our covenants? What would it look like if we started the process of covenant making from a place of generosity instead of scarcity and hoarding? Oh, there's not enough time. Oh, we don't have enough pieces of paper. Oh, what would it look like to make a way out of no way and to exhale? But still, there's something else tangible that I think we could really up our game as UUs, really keep us honest. And for this one, I turn to the story of Ruth and Naomi, which you can find in the book of Ruth, the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible. And basically their story is this. Naomi is Ruth's mother-in-law, and they had traveled, and Ruth was married to Naomi's son, who unfortunately passed away. And so as was the custom, and Naomi had another son who also passed away. So typically in the Bible, they just pass them along. But they were all dead, except Ruth and Naomi. And so Naomi said, "All right, well, it's time for you girls to, go on and find you a husband and move on with your life. I have nothing to offer you here. I'm just going to go wander around, hoping that someone will care for me because I'm getting older." And Ruth didn't want to leave. She stayed with Naomi, and they traveled back to Moab, and then eventually Ruth got married. But right now we're going to talk about the part before she gets married again. And so that's a really important story. I used to think about it as like, oh my gosh, they're so queer. Yes, lesbians in the Bible. This is amazing. I feel so great about queer visibility. But that's shifted as I've gotten older, because that still feels very narrow to me. And it kind of puts them in this box where they have to be dating. They have to be in this particular type of love. But what if they weren't? What if there was something else? And so Jay is one of my conversation partners. And we talk about access consciousness a lot, which is a set of tools that is aimed at giving people the agency to create the life that they aspire to live, to examine the promises they've made about who they are and create more promises that are better suited and destroy the other ones. So it's about how can we root down and imagine what else is possible and then move towards that. And one of the things they talk about is intimacy. And that's what's really helpful for me when I'm thinking about Ruth and Naomi outside of this. Well, they have to be in love. They really should have just like eloped and been happy. intimacy. And so access consciousness lays out sort of the 4 things that make up true intimacy, not sex, not those other things, but what is at the core of it all. And they have 4 things. The first one is honor. The second one is gratitude. The third one is vulnerability. And the fourth one is allowance. So I was talking to Jay and I said, I wonder if I could map them over, the story of Ruth and Naomi, to give me a fuller picture, to give me another story to add to the other stories I'm collecting that are not just about 2 people in love forever and ever, amen. So I think stories are how we shape our world. So I wanted more stories. I wanted more stories so that I could imagine what it looks like for me. And so I did. And so the first thing that I did was look at how honor showed up. And I thought about how honor showed up in Naomi saying, go. I want you to thrive. I want you to be taken care of. I want you to live your best life. Honor kind of is like respect. It's like, I respect you enough to not keep you. I'm sure they had a beautiful companionship, but I respect you enough to let you go. I said, wow, that's great. I'm taking a lesson from that. What would that look like to love people and then want them to live their best life, even if that wasn't with you? So after Naomi says, go, do your thing, be great, Ruth and the other woman who married her other son wept. There's a lot of weeping in this chapter, lots, which I think is great. And I interpreted that, I saw in that an enormous amount of gratitude for all that they had done while they were together. I can imagine that they were remembering all of the sweet memories, remembering the community that they had made, remembering all the times they made a way out of no way. I can remember that all being in the tears and in the weeping and then the pausing between and then more weeping. I can imagine that being a space of gratitude. So Ruth said, I'm not going there, I'm going with you. And she gave this grand soliloquy that in part was some of the words that we sang earlier, but basically, where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Where your God will be my God. Where you will be buried, I will be buried. And that's huge. Women don't do that in the Bible. That's the kind of thing that is reserved for the person who's taking care of you financially. But she made that statement. And what a vulnerable thing to do. I don't know all of the options available to Naomi about her responses. She could have still sent her away. But to be able to say, this is who I am, this is who I want to be, this is what my heart desires, is incredibly vulnerable. And lastly, so Ruth gives this big soliloquy, and Naomi's like, what do I do? She's gonna follow me around. How are we gonna live in this new arrangement? And Ruth says, all right, let's go. And that for me is a moment of allowance, of I am going to make space for all of you here with me. All of your vulnerabilities, I'm gonna take that and treasure that as a gift. And I want that part of you. I can imagine, they probably talked about that more. I can imagine Naomi being like, so you said this thing. How are we gonna work that out? I can imagine Naomi having the grace to stay in conversation about both of their vulnerable moments. And so those were the 4 things that access consciousness helped me to see in that story of Ruth and Naomi, about how they were vulnerable, how they respected, how they allowed space for one another. So my question for you is this: What other stories are there that help you to imagine what it would look like to exhale, what it would look like to draw your circle deep and wide? Those were deep roots that Ruth and Naomi were cultivating. What would it look like to move from a space of abundance? To say, I've only got 5 hours of free time today, and both my partner and my mother are important. How am I going to spend time? How am I going to make them feel loved? How am I going to show my appreciation? Even though I have 5 things to do, and my to-do list, and the hours, what would that look like to imagine a world where all of it is possible? What are the stories? Where do you see them? Where do you put them? Do you put them on the shelf and you're like, oh, that sounds cute? Oh, yeah, but that's in a movie. Oh, but that didn't really happen. Where do you put those stories? Do you imagine your own stories? As we leave here today, I encourage you to keep collecting those stories and then exhaling them out. Collecting the stories from nature, from other religious traditions, from our own religious traditions, and then exhaling them. May we sink deeply into the belief that we have enough. And may we seek out relationships like Ruth and Naomi, where we get to practice honor and vulnerability and allowance and gratitude. May it be so.
You'll find the words to the chalice extinguishing at the bottom of your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
These words by Emily Towns. Join the ranks of the cloud of witnesses and the contemporary faithful to change the world, not by tolerating it, not by reforming it or revising it. You are called to transform it by doing your first works over from time to time, by refusing to live in the silos of your heart, mind, and soul, and then building superstructure walls to keep others out, without realizing that you are also trapping yourself within. By falling in love with creation and living that love in your everyday, and by learning from those who suffer differently from you or who are different from you, by leaning into humor and laughter. You must not lose your heart. You must not lose your soul. You must not lose your intellect. You must not lose your spirit. This service is over. May our service begin again renewed.